Now, this is a presentation that I call Darkness, the Future of Freedom. And this was originally a 60-minute presentation I gave to a property developer in Vancouver that asked me to scare the living hell out of them. Right? I didn't quite understand it. I did one big optimistic presentation on exponential technologies, opportunity, where we're going, you know, pictures of kids throwing aeroplanes, and then this one. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the internet. And if you're not scared about the internet, and you're not looking inside the black box, you really, really should, and I'm going to hopefully open that box for you. I'm going to look at the history of the internet, right? This is one of the first sort of configurations of the internet. This is around about 1969. It was the ARPANET. And really, the internet was put together so that nodes across America could be taken out, but everyone else could still communicate with each other. And this is kind of to protect against nuclear war. It seems like a lot of people have spoken about nuclear war tonight, so that's been quite fun. And then in 1993, I got onto the internet and I dialed in on I was at Bournemouth University. I dialed in on green screens. I was a member of the Internet Club. And I dialed into Norwegian universities to look around their library catalogues. It was fascinating. Within a couple of years, things got very, very interesting. Websites started kicking up. I think Massive Attack and Radiohead, people like that, came up with really, really interesting websites. It was a creative outreach and an expression. And, you know, Time magazine, like Internet, the man of the year. I think the internet might have actually predicted that about 3 weeks ahead, said, maybe I don't really want it, but they insisted. And this is kind of what the internet is. One of the very first discussions, funnily enough, for Dark Futures, me and three friends, we chatted over beers, and we were talking about sharks chewing cables underneath the ocean in Thailand. Because the electrical frequencies were like attracting them, they were chomping away. And so the internet really is wires under the ocean, and very few companies own, I think it's about 6 companies, own the right to run those cables. And then we run them across the countries, mostly in the ground. So if you don't know what the internet is, realize it's just cables in the ground, very big cables, very capable cables. Very few people own them, and it's kind of interesting. Once in a while, I think Greenland accidentally trawlers up Iceland's cable and cuts them off from the internet. That's not a good day for Iceland at all. But really, today, there's about, who's actually built their own website? Right? Pretty much everyone. Like, you know, there's a few that haven't. You should probably go and build them. 4.66 billion websites. This is the reason that Google's so wealthy. How do you find people on the internet? That's the searchable web, though. That's the internet that we can see. But really, there's another internet as well. And my client was like, can you tell us about the deep web? And I didn't really spend a lot of time on it. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on it today. And a really good friend of mine in the audience today sort of sat down with me and validated that I wasn't just like blowing smoke. And it's kind of interesting. So what is it? Well, it's 500 times bigger than the surface web. And it's got lots of systems that are legitimate, and banking systems, databases, and whatever. Okay? You can only access it via the Tor browser. Who uses the Tor browser? Yeah, you're all in a database owned by the government, and the intelligence service knows who you are. And the Tor browser, it encrypts it, and it uses the onion router, and that's what it's short for, and it bounces your traffic around, and it encrypts who you are in a very simplistic way. But really, the beginning of the deep web came way before the internet itself with cypherpunks and hackers. And really, David Chalm, all the way back in 1985, one of the original cypherpunks says, security without identification is transaction systems to make Big Brother obsolete. The original idea of the internet and using cryptography and ciphers was really to act in a way that's completely independent from the big system. And really, it was about freedom and liberty. But for me, the big question is, what does that really mean? And in every presentation I give, it's like, what does any of this really mean? Well, freedom and liberty is being able to buy drugs and guns and all sorts of services that are pretty heinous on the Silk Road. Right? And now that's obviously shut down. But when that was shut down, that was doing about $1.2 billion worth of business. And the FBI took it. And most of the transactions, if not all the transactions there were run on Bitcoin. Here's one of the big problems with Bitcoin. It's an absolutely toxic currency. So any regulators, and I spoke at a Securities Commission this week, everyone's really scared. In New Zealand, the Security Commissions over there are like, yep, We see them as securities. We're going to regulate them. But as Bernd said, there's no borders. Here in Canada, we're having a really hard time. We're scratching our heads. What can we do? Bitcoin is a toxic currency. If you actually own Bitcoin, you're part of an ecosystem that crooks, criminals, people that kill people, control people, do sex trafficking, and all sorts of bad things operate in as well. How do you feel about that? Bad, yeah, okay. Good. Someone at the back is like, yeah, but I've tripled my money. And no, okay. So let's look at the surface web. Someone just said it's the same as the internet, right? And this is it. The majority of the presentation I gave to my client was actually about the surface web. There's more strange phenomena and things that we can see. So I'm going to talk about phenomena, social media. I'm going to talk about the kids. I'm going to talk about privacy and security. Right, let's look at digital phenomena. About 6 billion people in the world have got phone technology, mobile technology. That's more people in the world that have got access to clean running water. About a half of those are smartphones. By 2020, it'll be 6 billion smartphones in the world. But I go back to a book that I read in 1994, and if you haven't read this book, go and find it on the internet, or go and buy it off of Amazon. It's called Siberia. It's by Douglas Rushkoff. It absolutely blew my mind. Our growing dependence on computers and electronic media has made us easy targets, if not unwilling subjects, to one of the most bizarre social experiments of the 20th century. Who feels like they're in a bizarre experiment every single day? Yeah? I grew up in England with CCTV. Like, you just can't escape it. I interviewed Edward Snowden in January this year, and everyone's like, oh God, he's PRISM and all these things, surveillance systems. It's like in England, GCHQ are just like, yeah, whatever, and everyone in England's like, well, intelligence and GCHQ, it has to be there. It's not really the case. We are being captured in everything that we do. I like to think that this is what true freedom and democracy looks like in 2017. Number one, cats on the internet. Yeah? All the power in the world, and we still think that this is hilarious. Thumb tribes, the kids, right? Do you remember the story about how Justin Bieber went to Central Park, and all the kids were playing Pokemon Go, and no one knew who Justin Bieber was. They were just like walking around like that. Thumb tribes, they're also known as smombies. Smartphone zombies. Luckily, smombies are protected in the world. They're almost an endangered species because they keep dying when they cross the road. We've actually got smombie safety. This is in Holland. This is in Holland. So actually in the sidewalks, they've actually built traffic lights because kids weren't looking up and they were just walking out into the road. You think I'm joking? Kids were dying. And they thought that this was a good solution. In fact, they've actually stopped the kids from dying, so that's great. But think about this as a human behavior. This is not good human behavior. Tim Berners-Lee, who came up with the original protocols of how the internet works, we've lost control of our personal data. It's too easy for misinformation to spread on the web. Fake news, fake news, fake news. Yeah, fake news, manipulation, pushing crap out into the world. Unfortunately, the Grand Wizard Trump isn't doing a very good job of keeping democracy wholesome and full of integrity. In fact, he's just playing a massive joke on all of us every single day. Good times. And then from Trump to Amazon. And I love Amazon. Hands up who uses Amazon in here. Yeah, I mean, everyone uses Amazon. But this is really fascinating. So that algorithm's great at working out what you've bought and what to offer you next. And it looks at behaviors. And sure, like sometimes they can have these really strange behaviors and they adjust them. Well, back in the day, there was a particular situation, I think it was the beginning of last year, where it actually worked out that certain people were buying combinations of things together. So why would you buy a pressure cooker and ball bearings? Anyone have an idea? And why would you buy a 20-gallon lawn hose end sprayer in Clorox together? Or charcoal airflow and sulfur powder and spectricide stump remover grounders? That's right, we can make IEDs, improvised explosive devices. Now, obviously, this has been changed. If you go into Amazon and you do all this, it's all been fixed. But wow, isn't that crazy? So what's your routine like? I basically just alternate between sleep and total sensory overload. So pretty normal, yeah. Hands up who's got terrible insomnia, right? It's the internet. It's devices, it's tough. I struggle with it within time zones. I write presentations like this at 2 in the morning. So what about social media? So social media is actually growing up. It's moved beyond folly to be useful tools for information workers. Hurrah! However, this is how much time we spend in our lives on social media. 5.5 years, which is more than eating, which is 3.5 years, more than socializing face-to-face, which is 1.3 years, and more than doing the laundry, which is 6 months. I'm not so sad about that last one. But let's think about what's important in life. Canada's one of the biggest consumers of social media. The people that run CSIS love it, because they just harvest our data. It's that idea that the fear of missing out is drawing us deeper into the internet. I mean, we've got live streaming here on YouTube. I've got friends in various parts of BC, in the UK that are staying up really late to watch this, and down in the States because they didn't want to miss out on this evening. And then let's look at Facebook. 2.5, 2.6 billion users. Hands up who's on Facebook. Right? Hands up who's not on Facebook. Yeah, hackers and security people and politicians, maybe. They're all kind of the same. But if we look at Facebook, let's look at how things have changed. And I was chatting to a friend earlier this year. If you read this from left to right, it's almost like the anatomy of a relationship. I like you, I love you, you make me laugh. Oh, wow, what? Oh, no, what are you doing? And it's like, I'm super angry. It's a cycle of relationships. It's, honestly, the user experience people at Facebook could design it to be this way, right? Which are the ones that you click the most, like and love? And ha-ha, probably. I'd like to set you a challenge. Tomorrow, every single positive post that your friends push out there into Facebook land, just hit the angry button. I ran an experiment 2 years ago where I put a sad face underneath every single person's status for 3 days. And it caused me to have many, many heavy conversations with friends. And people called me and said, "Are you okay?" It's like, yeah, I'm just running an experiment. And no one believes me when I do things on Facebook anymore. Except on April Fools, when I absolutely punk everyone. I'm not moving to Montreal, by the way. The University of Cambridge actually did a huge analysis of Facebook, and they looked at all the data. And if you actually look at likes, and say if you've got access to someone's profile and you can look at 300 likes, you know them about as well as their spouse does. You can actually work out the dimensions that they operate in, and what they love, and what they really focus in on. Right? And even if you just look at 10 likes, you know them about as well as a colleague. 150 likes, you know them as well as their parents. But let's look at China. WeChat is an amazing platform. Someone rushed up to me the other day and said, "I've used WeChat, it's like I've spoken about it a lot, I've chatted to a lot of people that use it." Well, WeChat's a platform that basically in China, they're trying to bring every single piece of functionality that they can to create an ecosystem that you never need to leave. So messaging, social connections, mini programs, wallet and payments, and they've actually connected that to Bitcoin as well, personal wealth funds, e-commerce, credit scores. Everything in one place, right? And once you've actually got that ability to bring everything into one place, imagine what you can do in terms of influence, in terms of like compartmentalizing people and changing the dynamics of an entire society. Okay, fun. I love chatting about social media because it's still one of the most bizarre phenomena that I actually talk about. But what are the kids doing? Well, we already talked about smartphones. 2007, Steve Jobs stands up and he's like, "In my hand, I've got an internet communications device. I've got a music player and I've got a phone. It's called the iPhone." And everyone's like, "Yay!" Steve Ballmer from Microsoft is like, "No one's going to use that." And everyone in China started copying it. So today we've got the iPhone 10, or some people call the iPhone X. Apple hate that, so I'm going to call it the iPhone X. And so this technology is sort of a game of inches. But now you've got Huawei and LG and Samsung and everyone. It's been democratized in terms of the functionality. But how about, we've just had a baby. We've just had a baby. Has anyone got kids in the room? Yeah? This is going to scare the shit out of you. Baby's first smartphone. Can you imagine 6 to 36 months. Let's indoctrinate themselves. If you have children, or you see friends that have children, and they're giving them smartphones, tell them that it's an incredibly bad idea. It might keep them quiet for 5 minutes. That's because it's absolutely destroying what they're learning and how their brain develops. Okay, so this kind of behavior we have to avoid. In fact, pretty much every presentation that I do talks about how children are going to be in a very bad state because us as adults and their parents and the people that influence them are not taking control of what they do. Obviously, kids are going to spend a lot of time on devices because, hey, it's a shiny thing. I spend a lot of time on devices as well, but if I would have done that amount of time on devices when I was younger, I'd be in a pretty bad way. Let's talk about this. On average, children are getting their first smartphones around the age of 10. For some children, smartphone ownership starts even sooner, including second graders as young as 7, right? This is a bad idea. On average, sexting begins in the 5th grade. Pornography consumption begins when children turn 8, and pornography addiction begins around 11. When I was reading some of these stats when I was putting this together, it's not only shocking, it's thoroughly depressing to me, and it also makes me wonder what the hell adults are doing. Adults are being lazy, they're not learning about human behavior with electronic devices. If you go down to Silicon Valley and you chat to people that build technology, their children use coloring books and they run outside and they don't go near technology. These are the people that build the systems because they know what it's actually doing to everyone. 50% of the children admit that they were addicted to their smartphones. And there's another stat behind this, that 37% of their parents actually get into arguments with them every single day about that usage as well. So it actually causes bad dynamics between children and their parents. So this is what's shocking to me. The prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain that controls impulse, finishes developing in the mid-20s. Parents should not be surprised if younger children with smartphones lack impulse control. Susceptibility to change. Other people can influence them. Tech platforms can influence them. And in Korea, there's actually a condition, because kids use devices and screens more than any other country in the world, where they actually have a form of digital dementia around the age of 18 and 19. The right side of their brain doesn't develop properly, and they've actually had to build centers around Korea to help rehabilitate them. Because, yeah, a 19-year-old with dementia is not a good idea for the longevity of that child, and for the economy to actually be a good safe place and a boisterous place for economic growth, right? So this happy-go-lucky world of here's your identity online, this is what you can do, the selfie generation, Snapchat, Facebook, the constant feed is basically killing our children. I actually chatted to someone earlier this year, and she came up to me afterwards, and she was like, Nick, I need to tell you a story. My friend's 12-year-old son, we just couldn't get him off of his iPad, and he used it for about 15 to 16 hours a day. Now, I'm pretty sure this thing that happened to that kid was something that was already part of the system that he was operating with as a human. But at the age of 13, he was diagnosed with glaucoma. So that's pretty heavy to me. And to say that devices aren't having some sort of contribution to that, I think is wrong. I think that we're all basically killing our children by letting them have access to devices. Hands up who are parents and feel really happy right now. Absolutely no one. Okay, stop. In my presentations, the big red hand, but this is grey and black, means stop, because we have to talk about humans. I actually think that we're starting to try and walk away from what it means to be a human. This is what humans have been for thousands of years. We crave certainty and variety, significance. We want connection and love, growth and contribution. This is how we're going to be for thousands of years into the future. But we're getting away. Is it the end? Is it the end of society as we know it with all this technology? Is it going to be a good place? It could be a good place, but it could also be a bad place. This is why. If we look at 2001, the most valuable companies in the world were oil companies and General Electric and Citi Group and Walmart, and still had Microsoft there. If you actually look at 2016, you've got Apple and Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. People think that Amazon's going to be the world's first trillion-dollar company. I do like what they're doing. I think we should be careful of giving all of our attention to one particular company, but they're actually going at a pace that's faster than the others. Ultimately, the big players are all trying to create their own version of the internet. The walled garden. They want us to live our lives in their ecosystems. And that's when I start to look at the technologies that are coming. And this is from Gartner, and this is the emerging technologies hype cycle. All of these amazing things, smart advisors, consumer 3D printing, hybrid cloud computing, human augmentation, quantum computing, all the cool stuff that we read about. Well, really, if we actually look at profitable technologies, they exist in these hype cycles as well. There's those that are likely to be used in tracking and exploitations, and those that are likely to aid anonymity. So look at the disproportion of those that are doing good for us and those that are trying to protect us. Yeah, I think we need to change the ratio a little bit. I love this quote as well. We're sleepwalking into surveillance capitalism, which is evolving into data and computation-driven authoritarianism, one cool service at a time. Hey, that's cool, let's sign up. Who reads terms and conditions when you sign up for things? Yeah. Who reads terms and conditions every single day when they make changes to the terms and conditions? And there's a clause in there that says that they can change the terms and conditions at any point in time. Yeah, we're screwed. Someone at the back's like, yeah, me. Wow. You must do that for a living, right? So really, the people that are trying to own us and the people that we're trying to be part of a human race with are those people that push out devices and platforms across multiple verticals with cryptocurrencies, online and offline life, right? But who's going to win? These are the companies that are going to win. I'm actually writing a 2018 trends that will be coming out in the next sort of couple of weeks. And the first thing that I say in my 2018 trends, I just say moonshots are bullshit. Everyone talks about moonshots. I want to cure cancer. I want to cure aging. I want to ensure that, the world's going to be a better place. Do you know why? These companies have got billions of dollars to own the final solution there. And I think it's a game of inches where the radical creatives like us in the room can do little things that can make the world better. And my whole report is about that. And we're at a state now today, and this is a real word, where all we do is try and survive day by day. But wow, more than ever before, we've got anxiety. And I want you to go out and I want you to say this. Hey, today feels good. But there's this feeling. What's that feeling? That feeling is perma-anxiety. That was Darkness, the Future of the Freedom. This has been Dark Futures 4. I'd like to thank all of you. I really, really respect and love all of you here. Thank you for coming. Next year, I'm going to call it Dark Futures V because it's ridiculous. Have a great holiday season and have a great time. Thank you very much.